Welcome back to Money Mondays. Have you been wanting to start saving, maybe fill up your emergency fund or start saving for retirement, but you don't know how much you need? Today we're going to talk about your freedom numbers and how to calculate them. The reason I use the phrase freedom numbers is because achieving these savings goals will give you both time freedom and financial freedom. You may have heard the term financial independence number. And basically what that means is you've saved enough money so that you are financially independent from the obligation to work. You can continue to work if you want to, but if you didn't want to, you would have enough money to live off of for the rest of your life. Obviously, you can imagine if you didn't have to work anymore, that would not only free up your time, but it would also give you the ability to spend as you wish, depending on whether you saved enough money to do so. Now, there are two freedom numbers that you need to know, at least to get started on your financial independence journey. The first is going to be your emergency fund number. Now, it's going to look different depending on who you are, but a general rule of thumb is to have at least 3 to 9 months of your living expenses saved. Now, there's a few ways to go about calculating this and a few reasons to consider how much you actually want to have in your emergency fund. First, you need to know what your monthly living expenses are. If you already have a budget, then great. You already know that number and you can simply multiply that by 3, 6, 9, 12, whatever you want for your emergency fund number, and that's going to let you know what your savings goal is. Now, if you don't want to necessarily save for everything you spend in a month, then what you can do is evaluate your bank statements and take a look at the absolute bare necessities of what you're spending monthly. That's housing, food, maybe gas, car expenses, the basic necessities that will get you through month to month. The reason it's okay to think about your living expenses in more of a bare bones kind of way is because typically if you do need to be living off of your emergency fund, it's probably because you're not bringing in any income from a job. Maybe you got laid off, furloughed, fired, whatever the case may be. If you're not bringing in income, that would be a major reason why you're living off your emergency fund. So in that instance, you're not going to be eating out, shopping, doing all the things you might normally do. As you can see, we are into this pandemic and many people are still finding themselves unemployed. So I highly recommend having more like 12 months saved, or if you really want to be ambitious, more like 2 years saved. When you retire and start living off your investments, it's inevitable that you're going to experience a recession. The average recession lasts about 18 months. So if you have 2 years saved of living expenses in your emergency fund, then you have the ability to transition from living off your investment to living off of your emergency fund. And that will allow you to prevent yourself from dipping into your principal through the recession period. There's no right number to have for setting your emergency fund goal. It really depends on what your needs are and what you want to achieve. A good rule of thumb is to aim for 3 months and just continue to build from there. In absolute beginner baby steps, start with saving your first $1,000, especially if you're still on the path to paying down any debt. Having at least $1,000 saved is going to help keep you from most situations that would put you in more debt. So that brings us to our second freedom number, which is your financial independence number, or the amount of money that you need to save in order to be able to retire. Now, this number is going to look different for everyone, again, based off what your needs and wants are. What you want to do is think about what age you want to retire and how much you'd like to live off in retirement. The amount that you need to live off of in retirement isn't necessarily what you're living off of now. Maybe you need a little bit more because you've just started your career and you expect to make more money over time. Maybe you need less because you've got a lot of debt right now and you expect to be debt-free by the time you retire. You have to take all of these different things into consideration when you think about what your monthly retirement living expenses might look like. So let's say you end up determining that you would like to live off of $50,000 a year in retirement. Now that you have your yearly number, what you're going to do is multiply that number times 25, and that's going to give you your financial independence number. So if you want to live off $50,000 a year in retirement times 25, that means you need to save $1.25 million in order to be able to retire. Now let's break that down a little bit. Where did I get 25 from? Well, in 1998, 3 professors of finance at Trinity University printed a paper that we now call the Trinity Study. In it, they did an analysis of how much someone can safely withdraw from their retirement investments to avoid dipping into their principal and running out of money. Long story short, they ended up determining that if you only withdrew 4% of your investment every year in retirement, you would be able to safely stay within the range of earnings that your investment would be making so that you didn't dip into your principal and you'd have enough money to last you 30 years living in retirement. So if you know your yearly retirement goal and you know that that's 4% of your total investment amount, then you find out that 4 goes into 125 times. So you take your yearly amount, multiply by 25, and that's going to give you the total amount that you need for your financial independence number. So that's where we get the $1.25 million. Now, with that said, I don't want you to get discouraged thinking, how on earth am I going to save $1.25 million when I'm barely making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year? Well, go back and watch my Rule of 72 video and remind yourself that you're not saving that total amount of money. You're using your money to make money for you with the power of compound interest. So for example, if you started saving at 30 years old and you wanted to retire by 60, at an average rate of return of 10%, which is what the S&P 500 has averaged for the last 10 years, you would need to save approximately $552 a month in order to achieve the $1.25 million goal at age 60. That means that you would have only invested $199,000 to reach your $1.25 million retirement goal over that 30-year period. So just know that this is attainable, and as long as you know what your number is, then you can start making a game plan to achieve financial independence. I hope this video was helpful for you. Please take some time tonight, if you haven't already, to calculate your emergency fund goal and your financial independence goal, and let's work together to get you on a plan to achieving financial freedom. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next Monday.